Welcome everyone to the Economics of Catering, Investments, ROI, Costs, and KPIs webinar. Catering has become one of the most profitable channels for restaurants, but maximizing its potential requires smart investments, operational efficiency, and the right performance metrics. Today, we're going to dive into the data, strategies, and innovations that are shaping catering success in 2025. So if we're looking at the agenda here briefly, we're going to take a look at what we'll be covering today. We're going to start by exploring the market growth and ROI potential in catering. We'll break down the key areas to invest in for maximum impact. We're going to talk about tracking the right metrics and optimizing performance, followed by a discussion on managing overhead costs and efficiency. And finally, we're going to wrap up with a look at how technology is transforming catering. And we're going to take some time for some questions and a live Q&A at the end here. So if we move forward to introducing our lovely panelists, we're thrilled to have an incredible panel of industry leaders joining us today. First, we have Brian Strayer from Rubio's Coastal Grill, who has firsthand experience scaling and catering operations and driving revenue growth. Next, we have Jordan Johnson from Firebirds, wood-fired grill, who specializes in back-end operations, training, and leveraging data to optimize catering efficiency. And last but not least, we have Katherine Barone from Red Lobster, who is the driving force behind all off-premise at the leading brand and its growing success with catering. And I'm Nathalie. I'm the director of onboarding here at Lunchbox. And I want to, before we get started, just give space to the panelists to make any introductions of themselves, give yourself a pat on the back for all the wonderful things you're doing for catering. Brian, if you want to do a brief intro.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you, Nathalie. Appreciate it. My name is Brian Strayer. I'm the Director of Catering and Sales for Rubio's Coastal Grill here in Southern California. We have locations in Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California. I've been in catering for about 6 years now and very excited to join the panel and spread some knowledge to everybody who is looking to find out about catering.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And Katherine, if you want to go next.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Nathalie. Super glad to be here with Brian and Jordan today. I am the director of off-premise at Red Lobster. I've been working specifically on off-premise and catering for the last 4 years, almost 2 of that at Red Lobster at this point, but super happy to be here today to talk all things catering.
Awesome. And then Jordan, if you want to round us out.
Absolutely. I'm so glad everybody's here. Glad to be here with Katherine and Brian. I obviously represent Firebirds, cover 65 plus locations and growing with catering operations. So I'm excited to yield any knowledge I can or help I can with getting your operations underway or more efficient. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Before we get into the conversation, I do just want to remind everyone joining us today that there is a live Q&A at the end. Please use the questions chat tab to submit anything as we go, and we're going to make sure to get all of your questions answered in the final portion of this panel. So if we're going along and you have a question about what one of our panelists is saying, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll address everything at the end of the call once we've wrapped up this conversation. So diving in, we'll get started on the year in numbers. So looking back on the past couple of years, catering has seen some massive growth. It's top of mind for most brands in the industry, and we're going to talk a little bit about what each of your brands are seeing in the catering world. So I'll start with Katherine. Katherine, what has been some of the biggest growth factors behind catering for your brand?
That is a great question, especially to kick us off. I would say the biggest growth factor is really just treating it like the revenue channel that it is. Since joining Red Lobster, I've had the ability to really just revamp and refocus our off-premise business, and this is something that's come up kind of overall, but especially with catering now. So the best first step is to identify like those brand answers. It's going to be different for everybody, but what do you have to do in terms of ops, marketing, profitability to kind of get to where you want to be and get that growth that you're aiming for? For catering specifically, I encourage everyone to take that time. I know the last year or so, we've had a lot more conversations about catering, but it's never too late. There's so much opportunity in the industry for all of us.
Awesome. Thank you, Katherine. And my next question, I'm totally open to Jordan or Brian, but we're kind of wondering, catering is obviously growing across the industry, but not every brand prioritizes it in the same way. Some brands don't see it as, the major opportunity that we all kind of know that it is. So what do you guys think is the biggest missed opportunity for restaurants that aren't fully yet invested in catering?
Well, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, Jordan, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jordan. Ladies first.
All I was going to say was, I mean, catering is truly paid advertising. It's, you are advertising to dozens, if not hundreds of potential new guests for your establishment. When there is one person who is creating that order online or over the phone or however you accept those catering orders, you're not just, promoting your brand to them or catering to them, so to speak, but to those dozens or hundreds of guests that you will be feeding as well. So kind of piggybacking off what Katherine said, this extra form of revenue, the supplemental income, this is huge and it should be treated as such.
Awesome. So you're seeing it as a major way to grow your audience organically. Maybe I'm going to someone's birthday party and I've never eaten at the restaurant that's catering, but now I'm aware of them.
Absolutely.
Cool. Awesome. Great answer. And then Brian, I want to leave space for your answer as well, because you were seeming like you were going to jump in there.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on what Katherine and Jordan said, I think one of the biggest missed opportunities that we have for restaurants is that they aren't fully invested in catering. So I think the opportunity to train your in-house staff is one of the key things I think that will help grow catering. If they can fully understand catering, how it's going to grow their overall sales for catering and how it's going to grow their in-store sales, I think it gives them an opportunity to build relationships, to be an integral part of the success of that business. They have the opportunity to turn a one-time customer into a loyal catering customer that has potential for returning or repeat orders.
Awesome. Yeah. So kind of like if you're a business and you're more of a franchisee structure, kind of like getting your franchisees to buy into catering and why it's important to their kind of like bottom line. And then like the alternative of that, if you have just like employees, helping them understand why it's so important. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but why it's so important to make sure that every order that goes out is perfect, has all the items that the person ordered, et cetera, et cetera. So making sure from like the owner of the location, why they understand why it's super important for their bottom line and why the staff kind of understands that every order is super important, especially when it goes out for catering. Awesome. So moving on, we're going to hit a little bit on the ROI potential in catering. In our experience working with a wide range of brands and staying tuned into industry conversations, we've noticed a common challenge. Many brands underestimate the level of upfront investment required to build a successful catering program. From staffing and marketing to operations and technology, there's a lot that goes into making catering a real revenue driver. For some, the hesitation comes from not fully recognizing the long-term ROI that catering can deliver. I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to build a profitable catering program and how to evaluate its true return on investment. We'll start with Brian for this one. Brian, a lot of operators hesitate to scale catering due to perceived costs or operational challenges. What's one piece of advice you'd like to give them to see kind of like the larger ROI picture?
There's a couple different things that I look at. One piece of advice is just a very simple thing, is just to do the simple math. Create a spreadsheet for yourself and look at year-over-year growth. Are we growing? How much are we growing? Are we forecasting week over week or month after month? And how is that working out? I always suggest forecasting your sales so you have a good idea about what your potential ROI can be versus your actual sales. And kind of to evaluate the long-term ROI of catering investments, I look at a couple different things as well. I look at costs year over year. Are we growing year after year? Is what we're investing in bringing in the forecasted numbers that we were expecting? If not, why not? Then do we need to pivot and invest in something more tangible? For example, packaging is something that Rubio's is investing in 2025. I've been here for about 18 months, and we've had unbranded packaging for the past, I think, ever since Rubio's has done catering. So I really kind of put a stake in here and said, hey, we need Rubio's branded packaging. If we have unbranded packaging, for example, if you have a 100-person event, you're missing out on the brand awareness from future potential customers who might not have never tried Rubio's, for example. If you're missing out on those opportunities to grow in-store sales, that's not a good thing. EasyCater has a great statistic that if anybody who enjoys office catering, 47% of those people who like and enjoy office catering will now go into one of your restaurants and try your food inside your restaurant. So not only do you get the catering sales, but now you're turning that into the in-store sales as well.
Amazing. And that's
I was just going to say that's a huge component with labeling and branding. It speaks volumes when, even if you're not self-delivering an order, if you're, a restaurant group that may utilize third party or what have you, when you're sending out your restaurant's product with labels, stickers, whatever it is on the brand to represent yourselves, you don't know how many people that you're reaching with with that effect just then. So that was a great point.
100%.
To ask who's catering this event, you've missed out on that opportunity for sure.
Yeah, and you miss out on opportunity even like further than like doing, you know, stickers and packaging, like giving some sort of incentive to your potential new audience, right, to purchase from you, whether that's like a discount QR code on the back of something that they can leverage or whatever it might be, like incentivizing that initial behavior through the branding efforts that you're already kind of like spending money to put out there, right? Okay, awesome. So Jordan, you kind of like started touching on it, but I want to ask you, how do you evaluate the long-term ROI of catering investments, and what factors make the biggest difference in profitability for your brand?
Yeah, well, of course, at a high level, you're going to be measuring based on net profit, et cetera, you know, but there's some other key strategies that I think that need to be evaluated very importantly, you know, operational analytics, marketing efforts, but, you know, especially guest satisfaction and what the feedback is that's coming back. You know, you don't start measuring those really until you really get started, and then you can start collecting data, of course, and developing, you know, analytical behavior, et cetera. But, you know, when you're looking at guest satisfaction, what your feedback is saying, what your operators are saying, even from a store level, and seeing where you can make tweaks or adjustments based on what you're presenting out, I think it goes a long way with scaling your profitability, good or bad or indifferent. So that's what I would say.
What would you say, Jordan, just like kind of like off of the topic of collecting feedback, both like kind of like internally from your operators and then also from customers, just like from your experience, what is like top feedback that you get where you're like, ooh, this is really good feedback, or ooh, we really need to nip this in the bud?
Well, a lot of, in our locations, we do a lot of, you know, third-party delivery. So delivery is a huge aspect for us because once it leaves our four walls, you know, of our restaurant, our establishment, you know, we find that in someone else's hands, basically. So that aspect with feedback is really important to us and how our product is being delivered and handled and taken care of, because it speaks volumes, even if we know something wasn't our fault or was our fault, or if on the opposite end, if there is praise to be given about something in particular with that particular dispatch driver or what have you, we want to know about those things so that even as it leaves our restaurant, we know we produced a great product. But that step further with delivery, with setup, with all of those factors that happen once it gets to that business or to that home, we take that internally very seriously with our operators to make sure that we are continuing to produce that great product that we're receiving feedback on, or if there's an opportunity, we are taking that and redeveloping our system so that we can do it better next time.
Amazing. So also kind of touching on like the importance of not only is the food great, not only do you have the branding there, but who are you kind of leveraging as your delivery provider, and are they giving that like treatment when they pick up the food, while they're driving the food, and especially once they're delivering the food, are they laying it out as you would want, things like that?
It's a true partnership for sure with all vendors, with all parties involved, and the more important that stress, I think the better outcome for everybody.
100%. And then Katherine, pivoting to you, catering often delivers higher margins than traditional takeout or delivery. Obviously, it's a higher order value, a higher subtotal value. How does Red Lobster particularly consider catering as a part of their overall growth strategy?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Catering does have the higher margins there, larger order sizes. I mean, even for Red Lobster, our average order size is probably greater than the other two brands on this call, but still, even catering does lend itself to that. Additionally, for us, I mean, catering orders often take place outside of our major peak day part, so that lends itself to increase operational efficiencies, which then just continues that flywheel to help us win. For a brand like Red Lobster, we're very fortunate to have that brand recognition, so that definitely helps us. And we do have a menu that caters to these, you know, catering and special occasions that we often go after. So that does help us. But one of our next steps is really to reimagine what our catering menu looks like for these new catering occasions that we're trying to go after and win. So really building on top of our, you know, catering reputation is key. Relations are key. So building off of our general off-premise brand reputation that we've been building the last couple of years and we continue to hone in on, as well as owning the execution of this new menu that we're going to be bringing out. It's really going to allow our brand to be more top of mind and accessible for these broader occasions that we're working on.
That's great. And so the operational thing is an interesting point, like the idea that you can leverage downtime of your staff where you might be paying someone like an hourly rate or whatever it is, to make their return a little higher. Like maybe after the lunch rush, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. is a slower time. Maybe that's the time where you want to really capitalize on people picking up, the catering orders being executed, etc. I would be curious to understand with the revamp of your menu, Katherine, how are you like identifying the types of events that you want to go after? Like when you say we're making a menu to target certain event types, is it like we want to target people's birthday parties, or we want to target these like specific holiday occasions, or can you dive a little deeper into that?
Yeah, of course. I think that that's an evolving thing that we're working on, but I can speak to it. So for one, we are really trying to lean into these sports occasions this year. So that's one, social catering event that we really want to be focusing on. How can we win that better? How can we be more top of mind? And how can we change our menu a little bit to be a little bit more accessible? I mean, seafood isn't something you usually think about for sports, but we do have, shrimp is a great finger food. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And then on the flip side of that, for, corporate catering, that's really where we have some strong ties right now, is like, how can we revamp our menu and move that around a little bit, excuse me, so that way we can be more available for the types of events that we have, leading more into the platters, looking at our lunch boxes and different offerings. How can we bundle it differently with drinks and desserts, and really understand like what is our ideal catering guest looking for, and how can we deliver that to them a little bit better?
Awesome. Amazing. That is a really, really great point. And like looking at your menu and seeing like what you might not be known for, but what can you leverage product wise and inventory wise to cater to these like new events and new topics that you might not have thought about before. Awesome. Okay. Well, moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about overhead costs and efficiencies. So basically the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges in catering, is balancing cost control with quality. A lot of brands struggle to manage overhead, whether it's labor, which is something that Katherine touched on, packaging, which Jordan and Brian have both touched on, or logistics, kind of like delivery, which Jordan touched on. And they struggle to manage all these things without cutting corners. So Jordan, we can start with you. Firebirds obviously has a strong focus on operational efficiency, from kitchen performance to call center management. What cost-saving measures have had the biggest impact on streamlining your catering operations?
That's a wonderful question. We take streamlining our catering operation very seriously here. As we have ramped up catering and our operations last year, we really saw a need with making sure that we were streamlining all communications, whether that's from the vendors, from the guests, from the operators, and making sure that everyone had kind of a centralized location on where to send feedback, requests, issues, praise, whatever it is, so that time consumption isn't a big factor within the operator, so that they can focus on their day-to-day operation and just executing the catering, really. So, and I can touch on this more at another point, but having a streamlined catering hotline, if you will, phone number, email, et cetera, where all of our partners around us, our stakeholders, have availability to and access to, which is essentially myself and my team. Basically, we're able to triage any request that you have, basically, and get it to the right people so that we can get the answers that's needed. Whether it's from a guest feedback standpoint, we can quickly get you what you need. If it's from a partner standpoint, a easy cater vendor or a delivery driver, what have you, that can come directly to me and my team as well. We can get the quick answers that you needed there. And from a operator standpoint, if something's missing, if they're having trouble with something on back order or recipe adherence or guidance, all of those questions are streamlined and able to get out to you as soon as possible, so that you can focus, all three of those components can focus on what they need to do, basically. So that's been very helpful.
Yeah, and I think when you have kind of like a centralized team or like a special team that's particularly dedicated to one thing, like catering, right? You're ensuring that when people do call, that the staff, the people who are managing that like hotline or call center or whatever it is, are very much trained up on that one singular thing. Like they're not worried about like more of like the native ordering, like the everyday pickup and delivery. They're like, catering is what we do. This is what we specialize in. These are the commonly asked things that people ask us. And you can even kind of train them to do sort of like upsell. Maybe they're calling your catering hotline because they want to add something or they have questions about what they order, and you can use that opportunity and that like centralized communication to get them to purchase even more.
It's a very personable experience, and I know my counterparts, Katherine and Brian, can agree. Catering is a very personal experience, especially for social events or even your B2B events, where this one person is making sure that this entire catering lunch or dinner goes smoothly or what have you. So to make sure you have somebody on your team that represents, in my line, Firebirds, that knows the brand, this is what they do, this is what they live and breathe practically, like this is what I love. So you will hear it in my voice and my team's voice to make sure that you're going to get the help you need, whether it be a manager, an hourly person, whoever needs the help, we will make sure you get it accordingly so that we can get everyone what they're looking for.
That's a really great point. Yeah, like the personableness of it, and like the intimacy of like catering is a more personable thing that goes on in the restaurant industry. It's like it's a bigger deal than just like, oh, I'm picking up my lunch. I'm just like, whatever. It's a daily thing, whatever. It's like I'm catering my child's birthday. I'm catering this like very big event or whatever. So like to have that kind of like intimacy between like the brand and the customer can be, the difference between someone being like, it was all right, and someone kind of like being riveted by the experience that they have with your brand.
You're right.
Awesome. Okay. Brian, next question is for you. What strategies has Rubio's implemented to control catering overhead? Laboring, packaging, logistics, how do you manage those factors without sacrificing value?
Yeah, there's a couple things that we're doing. I've already touched on packaging, how we're completely revamping our entire packaging for our entire catering products. That's one item. Another strategy that I utilized is I did a deep dive into our catering packages. When I first came here, I didn't really know too much about Rubio's, I'll be quite honest, but I do know that the catering packages have been here for years and years and years. And I wanted to know, are we doing the right thing with building these packages? Are they the right products? Are they the right builds? So what I realized very quickly is that we had the right packages, but not the proper builds. In reading our reviews, for example, on EasyCater, one of the biggest customer complaints that we had was they didn't have enough protein and there was extra waste from the salsa, guacamole, and cheese. So we basically, just my culinary team and I, we just basically did, through trial and error, new builds. We created new builds, figured out, hey, if we increase the protein, if we decrease the salsa, what is that going to look like? So the culinary team and I got together. We did it probably over the course of a week or two, and we ended up creating the same package, but the same package now has more value, a lower food cost, a lower packaging cost, and on top of that, we're able to reduce our price to the customer for these same packages. They now have 2 more ounces of protein. They're 15 to 20 more ounces of beans and rice, a few less ounces of salt and guacamole, some of the things that went to waste. And again, one of the other things that we look at is now we have new stackable embossed trays with Rubio's branded lids. That's going to fit much better into our catering bag, on our customer's table. And the branded packaging, I think I've said, I'm more excited for that than anything I think else, because Rubio's has never had branded packaging before. And in reducing costs, I would always suggest look at everything, from the build to the bag, to the packaging, to the delivery company, to the utensils, to your product name. Look at everything and see where some of the gaps are. I looked at a lot of the guest reviews and I found that a lot of the gaps were the fact that we didn't have enough protein and that we were wasting guacamole and salsa. The guests will always have valuable feedback to help you adjust your catering offerings without compromising that guest experience. About 10 months ago, I switched out a delivery company, which I thought was a key thing to help us reduce mistakes within our catering division. Our fulfillment issues went down by more than half. We used to have a company, and I'm not going to put them on blast, that probably everybody knows and probably everybody has used at one point in time. We were getting anywhere from 10 to 12 issues per week with our catering orders. I thought that was way too many, so I made a change to a different delivery company. Those issues have been cut down by more than half. We're saving money on the deliveries as well. And now anywhere from 10 to 12 issues went down to 2 to 4 per week, which is an extreme dramatic improvement. This allows us to not only save customers who receive a bad catering experience, but keep them as recurring and repeat customers.
That's awesome. When you talk about like making the switch for delivery couriers, and we don't need to drop anyone's name here. But what were like the differences between the platform that you were leveraging and the platform that you decided to switch to? Did you find that they were smaller, bigger? Did they more like advertise that they were specific for catering deliveries? Like what was the thing that made you think, okay, I think I should go with this other delivery partner because they seem to be the people that are going to do catering right?
Yeah, great question. A couple of things. I looked at 3 or 4 different companies, and the one company that we did switch to was able to cover nationwide. They had better tracking capabilities. Their pricing was better. And the company that we're using now, it's more of a personal experience as opposed to the other company that we're using that was more of a general experience. This company is specific to catering. They have their own catering bags. They have their own drivers who are 1099. And if there's any issues with the driver, we can blacklist them off to where they don't, deliver a bad experience to a customer again. So I think overall, our delivery experience has improved dramatically by about 500%. Again, it's cutting costs. It's delivering a better experience to the customer.
Amazing. And I do just want to also touch on, you mentioned like kind of like the research and development that you did in recognizing like, okay, maybe we're giving too much guacamole, but not enough protein in these packages. What, aside from the customer feedback, like did you do any kind of like hands-on research, for lack of a better term, when you were kind of like making the determination as to how you wanted to alter what was being offered in your catering offerings?
It was a couple different things. It was really reading the customer reviews on a couple different sites. EasyCater was one of them. The other thing was we ordered taco packages, taco bars to our RSC, to our corporate office. And what I wanted to find out with our staff is, hey, are these reviews correct or are they not correct? And in doing 3 to 4 different orders with taco bars, we found out very quickly that the customers were 100% correct. So that gave us credence. And sorry, go ahead. That gave us credence to go ahead and switch out the packages. We got very quick approval from the C-levels, and we made the change very quickly, and our customers are extremely happy now.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And Katherine, I want to leave time for your question as well. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for restaurants to reduce costs in catering without compromising the guest experience?
Yeah, I think this is easier said than done, and it's a general off-premise thing, but especially with catering, with how much we already touched on, like how important these occasions are. But really focusing on preventing refunds or guest opportunities before orders leave the restaurant or before they happen. So I know not everything is our control if we're not delivering the orders, but really investing on the front end with, training, staffing, making sure that we're setting our ops teams up for support with our menu, and really focusing on that aspect. So that way, we're getting the order accuracy right. We're making the guest experience what we want it to be. I mean, when fixing problems, like if you do it right, you can definitely build brand loyalty from that experience, but you can definitely use those costs in better ways to build long-term business growth, especially for catering.
Amazing. So can you dive into a little bit, I'm curious, like what are some things that you do operationally when you are training your staff, and how does it kind of like really mirror the way that you would regularly train them for just onesie twosie, like pickup and delivery? And how is it really, really different when you're training them to execute on like these catering orders?
Yeah, I would say it's not necessarily different. It's just the scale. So everything that we're working on for off-premise, making sure that we get the packaging, making sure that we're getting everything ready for the orders. I think with catering, we do have that benefit, right? I try to let all of our operators know, like, this is such an opportunity. We get so many orders before we even technically open for the day. So you can really come in and get everything ready, execute on this order, really take the time and get the team members on labor-wise to execute really well, because it's not interfering with lunch. It's not interfering with dinner. And that way you can really just make sure it's going to be a fantastic guest experience. So really just building on the foundations of off-premise, but really dialing it in for catering, making sure that we have everything in place, making sure that, our bags are labeled, that we include thank you notes, different things like that. Especially for orders of this scale, we want to make sure everything's perfect.
She just made a really great point with the time that the caterings come in. It's true in most places that a lot of your catering orders come in usually before. If you're a lunch restaurant, they're going to come in just a little bit before your dining room opens. So back to like your very first question, Nathalie, this extra stream of revenue coming in is a lot of times not even hitting when your dine-in guests are coming into your restaurant. They're kind of hitting on those off times. So why not, basically,
Right.
But just a point to
Yeah, really great point. I also really like the idea of putting in thank you notes, Katherine. Is that something that Red Lobster does?
We do.
Wow.
Yes, we like to put notes on our bags and different things like that. I know different markets do it a little bit differently, but they always make sure to put the Red Lobster love in there for every single order and every single guest.
That's awesome. That's really, really great. Alrighty. So I think we've kind of touched on a couple of things there. Like obviously the packaging has been a really big topic for everyone, just kind of like getting your name out there and growing your audience. But then I think really interesting points, like the idea of when you're leveraging the labor that you're already staffing is really interesting, especially between Jordan and Katherine, what you guys are saying, and that a lot of the times, and this might be, news to some people that are joining us here on this webinar, the catering is coming in and the orders come in during these downtimes. So it really does become this like, why not stream of revenue, because it's not overwhelming. It's actually just like using up your downtime, which is a plus. That's awesome. Okay, so we can move forward. We want to touch a little bit on where to invest for maximum impact with catering. So segueing into kind of like where you spend money or you spend time, knowing where to invest is obviously key to building a profitable catering program. Packaging, staffing, to technology and training. The right investments we know can drive efficiency and growth, and the wrong investments can be lethal. So want to talk a little bit about that, how you guys are maximizing your impact. Katherine, we can start with you for this one. Red Lobster is currently growing through a catering transformation. How are you approaching investments in areas like packaging, staffing, or technology to maximize returns? And if you kind of want to hit on like which one do you think is the most important, the least important, where you kind of see the most impact and why you're really investing in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I would say high level at Red Lobster, we're focusing on two requirements of how we look at investments. Like number one, is it going to improve the guest experience and drive that frequency for us to drive the business? And two, like does it improve and or simplify what we're asking of our ops team? In our opinion, we have to set up our ops team for success in order to execute well, which then drives that great guest experience. So both of those are very top of mind. Anytime we're doing anything to drive, incremental business, catering is a great example. It really needs to check both of those boxes. Packaging, I would say, is a great, opportunity. Generally speaking, Red Lobster updated our off-premise packaging within the last year. Catering packaging is next to look at. But even with that change, I will say that is very important. It is great real estate, as we've already touched on for catering. It should not be left unused. I would say, especially for a brand like Red Lobster, where we have, more expensive menu items, we are more associated with these very special occasions. We really want to make sure that we're delivering on that, and food presentation and just overall order presentation is very key. So packaging, I do agree, is a top one. However, there are others that I would probably maybe even put higher than that. So I think that every brand really needs to determine like which occasions you're going after. Like I mentioned, maybe more social, maybe more corporate catering, and really figure out what they want that experience to look like. Things like staffing, training, local store marketing, I would say those are like key. At Red Lobster, we've done all sorts of things, but one thing I really wanted to bring up is we've been doing what we call biscuit drops. So, of course, you can't think of Red Lobster without thinking of our Cheddar Bay biscuits. So we do these exercises where we take a couple dozen of our Cheddar Bay biscuits. We take some catering and just general brand merchandising out into our communities and just sincerely focus on building those relationships. Getting to know, our surrounding businesses, doctors' offices, car dealerships. I mean, you name it, like going out there, meeting people, understanding the events that they cater for and, what that looks like for them, timing wise, how many people they're catering for, and just, inviting them back into our restaurant as well. I mean, catering is something that we want to be focusing on, but generally speaking, we just want to make sure that they know that we're there, and that we're able to serve them to go, delivery, catering, in-house, I mean, you name it. So really focusing on the investments in people, I think staffing, training, making that investment in time with the merchandising and getting out into the community, it's really already been paying off for us, and I would definitely encourage others to do the same.
Cool. And I think like that really harkens back to what Jordan was touching on at a certain point, where it's like the catering relationship, or it's very relationship focused. It's like a more intimate relationship where you want to make those strides to like meet these people in person. You don't just want to like send out a blast email that's like, we do catering now, like come over. You want to like make personal contact with the people in the doctor's offices, the people that have to go in and work in an office, things of that nature, so that they're kind of like putting a face to a name. and they're that much more incentivized to come in and spend their money with you. I think that's really, the biscuit drop is a very, very nice touch. I love that.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would love it if that happened in my neighborhood too. I'm not sure if we ever have Lobster around, but I would love it.
Reminder to the teams that they should be working on their next round. Don't worry.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, that's really, really great. Just having like that extra, that personal touch to it, just to stand out from your competition. That's wonderful. I want to pivot to Brian. Brian, if a restaurant is looking to grow catering, but they have a limited budget, what do you think is the single most important area to invest in first?
I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but great question. I think one of the best places to start is investing is to look in your in-house with your own people. Catering, as Katherine touched on, is very personal. It's about relationships. So if we can train them to do cheddar drops, and we do the same thing, Katherine, we do sample bag drops. If they can create that personal relationship, we have a better opportunity to get those recurring business from that customer. The GMs, our AGMs, our shift leaders, whatever we call them in your brand, they're the face of our catering experience. So giving them valuable training and feedback can be a game changer for some brands like myself who don't have the bandwidth of having a dedicated sales team. Rubio doesn't have a sales team, so we rely heavily on the AGMs and the GMs to kind of be the face of catering. Another thing I would look at is accuracy. Is order accuracy where we need to be? Are we delivering what the customer wants? Sometimes we really only get one chance at giving our customers a great catering experience, so we need to get it right. It's really hard to get a customer back after they order, and what they receive, they have 2 items missing. That usually means someone didn't eat, get their food, and leaves you a bad catering experience. Consequently, most likely, the customer is going to go somewhere else. It's extremely hard to get those customers back. One other thing I think about as well is how do we invest in first-party sales? I think that's something that goes often unlooked as well. We have different partnerships, Easy Cater, Foods, or the Cater Nation, or the whole different partnership group out there. But how do we invest in first-party? If we invest in first party and we can educate our customer to order on our platform, in addition, we can take away those third party fees. Brands can use that additional money to grow. We have the ability now to own that customer data, to do the proper follow-up, fix any issues that we might have, and then to remarket them so they can continue to be a loyal customer. We can continue to get them to be loyal, get them to be a rewards member, and get recurring orders if we just think about it that way.
That's awesome. I really like the idea of you kind of invest in your people first, make sure that they understand the value. And in your case, Brian, you're kind of saying hey, we don't have a sales team. I need you guys to wear multiple hats. I need you to be all hands on deck in order for this to kind of be worthwhile for the business. That pivots really nicely into kind of our question for Jordan here, which is really centered around accuracy, training. So Jordan, we know that training is a major investment that often gets overlooked. Not at Brian, not at Brian's restaurant, not at Rubio's, but at other restaurants. How do you ensure your teams are equipped to execute catering orders at the highest level? And what role does technology play in that process?
This is my favorite question so far. Yes, Firebirds invest very heavily in the training and development of our staff and operators, not just, catering, but the dining experience, with new restaurant openings, et cetera. But specifically for catering, we offer something that's pretty much what I call the holy grail of catering. It's our catering rollout playbook. And I spent hours I don't want to mention kind of helping facilitate and grow this catering rollout playbook that really goes from A to Z on all things you need to know catering with Firebirds for our operators. And it was time consuming to create, but it's something that is in all of the restaurants now so that they have this play-by-play guide, this book, this Bible, if you will, that helps them understand anything from why we do catering, what our mission is, what our values are, recipe adherence and guidelines, what we even offer on the menu, where our platforms are, product and procurement, what is the spec for X, Y, and Z, where are we cross-utilizing this dish versus this dish, what are, all of these different areas that have to do with catering. Everything is centralized in one central hub for our operators, both digitally and on paper. Additionally, at the end of this playbook, we have a frequently asked questions and a guide to who you can call or reach out to if you have similar questions, which is me and my team, of course, if you have anything further. But just what Katherine and Brian were saying, this is so important to invest in your people so that they understand the importance of catering and what this revenue stream can bring to not just the company at large, but to the individuals working there in that building day to day at all times. So similar to them. Trade drops are really important to us. Our creme brulee cheesecake bites are second to none. I'm sorry, they're just fantastic. So we love going around and passing those out and making those personal relationships and really building on those, not just a one-time drop, but following back up, making sure that experience went well for them. And even if we are on, through third party or first party, whatever it is, we always want to make sure we're reaching out and making sure that guests had a wonderful experience, and whatever we can do to optimize on that is of utmost importance to us.
That's awesome. You guys are making me hungry. Between the biscuits and the cheesecake bites, it's a lot. But no, I think that's a really good point, Jordan. Just like the idea that part of investing in your team is doing the preparation so that your team can thrive, right? It's not just saying like, we're going to be super hands-on when we train and we're going to be right there. It's saying like, hey, no, we're going to have this guide so that you can easily reference and you can easily thrive even when I'm not there to hold your hand. Everything is going to be laid out for you, and pretty much just like going over every scenario that could possibly pop up. I'm sure it also helps with like when you're thinking about like investing in your team and you're thinking about preparing them, like if you do have staff turnover, having a guide like that makes it that much easier for another person to kind of step in and step up. So you you don't have lapses, or you don't like suffer periods of inaccuracy when you are training those newer staff members that inevitably happen in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve for sure. In some areas, as we were developing it, I'm working day to day, moment by moment with operators in the field and trying to really understand and hone in what they're dealing with and what their experiences are, as well as the guests and our vendors and so it just, as we've been able to streamline all this communication, I have a better idea of what the field really needs, and it's definitely helped us out incrementally for sure.
That's amazing. And it is like an incremental arena. Like catering is not going to be perfect. That's like what I always tell people when they're kind of venturing into catering with Lunchbox is like, we're going to hit bumps in the road and we're going to learn together, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's better to start honing in on it so that you don't miss a very big opportunity, which we kind of obviously on this panel all agree catering is. Awesome. So moving forward, we want to talk a little bit next about the metrics that y'all are using to track for growth. So dive in a little deeper here. Once you've made the investment into catering, which everyone here has, what are best tips in helping you understand if it's paying off and delivering to guests? We want to talk through some of the metrics that you use to essentially gauge success. Is my catering program going well? Am I seeing a decent ROI? Are my customers happy? Or are there a lot of tweaks I need to make in order to make this a successful revenue stream? So Katherine, let's start with you. Many restaurants track basic metrics like order volume, average check size, etc. But what's something that you think is overlooked metric-wise that can make kind of like a big difference in your catering profitability?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think all the ones you mentioned are very important, but I would say order prep times. I think, at least from the casual dining perspective that I have, we think of catering orders as equal to like a 50 top in the restaurant. So, these are very large orders for catering. So it's not really talked about, but really has a big impact on the end result and guest experience. So you want to make sure that everything's firing at the right time and your ops team is really set up for success there. So that way they can get the entire order ready and have it be the right temperature and have the presentation be ideal for that end experience for the guest. When it's done right, it really does build that brand trust, that loyalty, and that repeat business, because they know that they can count on that great experience every time.
100%. And the prep time, so that I think as well, like prep time, lead time, things of that nature, like they also fall into, there's like an internal and an external, where it's like we want people to be able to choose when they want their catering order pick up or delivered and have it be executed and ready for them at that time. And then there's that nuance of internally, we need to give our staff enough time to prep these items and to do it efficiently so that we don't suffer inaccuracy. So it's like finding that balance of like, we want to be speedy, we want to be quick, we want to execute for the customer. We want to be able to offer, just like 24 hour in advance catering or something like, pretty aggressive like that. But we don't want to kind of like suffer on quality and accuracy. So it's like finding that balance a little bit. Brian, next question for you. What KPIs does Rubio's particularly focus on to measure catering success? And how do you use those insights to improve your operations?
Yeah, great question. I took a look at a few specific KPIs we kind of track and determine the measure of our success. The first thing I like to look at is comps. Are we growing year over year? How are we doing compared to 23 versus 2024? And are we growing like I forecasted that we would? I also I like to look at order accuracy, such as missing items, cancellations, and rejections. And I think I can say that number should be at 0. I'm sure Jordan and Katherine will back me up on that. That number should always be 0. However, we don't live in a perfect world, so mistakes are going to happen. But the closer we get to 0, the better it's going to be for our brand. We have to figure out, why these cancellations or rejections happen. See if there's additional training that we need to provide to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Another one is transactions. Are we having more transactions than last year? If not, we probably aren't growing the way we need to. We might need to readjust our strategy. Look at the check size. What is our average check size versus A versus B? Are we growing our check size year over year? Rubio's had a little bit of a rocky 2024, but, getting rid of all those distractions such as Chapter 11, closing restaurants down, doing layout. I feel me and my team were able to almost double our catering sales from 2023 to 2024, despite the fact that we had a little bit of a rocky 2024. But the fact of the matter is, our goal is to always grow. We grew from 2.9 to 5.8 last year. Now my new goal is to grow up 10%, and it's removing all these different roadblocks, tracking our performances. That's going to help me get there.
That's amazing. 2.9 to 5 is a big jump, and 5 to 10 is an even bigger jump. So good luck with you with that. It sounds like you guys are doing all the right things to make that happen. And it's interesting too, like when you're thinking about growth overall, it's multifaceted. It's like, are we just getting more orders? That's like a very point blank, but is the value of that orders increasing? And are we seeing the same people? Are we seeing repeat customers? Is like the other kind of point of that is like, hey, on top of these new guys that are coming in and our orders are increasing, are people coming back? And that's like another way that I definitely think, you kind of measure success is, okay, people order once, but do they order again?
Right.
Yep. And you don't want any lapsed customers. You want those repeat customers because they're going to build your loyalty. They're going to build your catering.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And Jordan, we'll close out with you. This is my favorite question for you. Firebirds, obviously, I know, takes a unique approach to guest feedback, including a catering hotline and review tracking. Can you speak a little bit as to how this data informs your team decision making and what impact has it had, on your customer satisfaction?
Well, dang, this is now my second favorite question. I can't decide which one's my favorite. In a word, it's revolutionized our experience. And I truly mean that. Our decision making here at our home office has really just changed the game with the data that we receive, both from operators and from our guests. But with this feedback, we've been able to make decisions like, should we be lowering lead times, changing parameter settings with order minimums, delivery times, et cetera, just getting that raw feedback from our guests about what they're looking for. You can clearly see by looking at our sales, at our reviews, what have you, if there's a demand for what our product is giving. So we can, in turn, create that experience for them and either, again, lower those lead times, what have you. On the opposite end, like with menu development, that's been huge for us. When we first started, we may have had menu A, but as we have developed and built those personal relationships and spoken to our guests, spoken to our operators about how well you can execute this item, how is it traveling, is the guest even enjoying it, how many orders have we sold in XYZ. It's helped us shift the menu as well, and we've made those adjustments, and it's been extremely profitable for us to see those shifts happen and to really get into what guests are wanting and how the operators are able to execute these items. So just in real time, again, to piggyback what I mentioned earlier about with this hotline, we're able to really just get all of this data in on whether we're looking at a dashboard or just data coming in via email, feedback, phone, what have you, and we're able to make these decisions at a really high level and make those adjustments as needed. So it's been a lot of fun with these decisions. We're definitely seeing a return there for certain.
That's awesome. And I think as well, with the call center that y'all are doing, and yes, you're making decisions at a high level, but you're able to be very agile and fast with your decision making when you kind of centralize the hub that is making those decisions for this particular area of the restaurant. You're able to pivot quickly, make adjustments quickly, and execute quickly without kind of having to go through what I assume a lot of hoops to make changes.
Yeah. And the beauty of it too is, what we've all touched on already is when your team, especially your management at the ops level, is on board, it makes it a really seamless experience, because it's not like I'm speaking on behalf of the GM of X location or what have you, but, I'm able to make informed decisions that Firebirds as a company would make anyway, and I'm able to work very closely with that GM or service manager or whoever to make sure we're making the right decision for that guest moving forward, or that operator can come speak to me about what we should do about X, Y, and Z, or I can get feedback from them on that. So it's very helpful all the way around to have something centralized like that.
Awesome. Great. I know we're running a little low on time, so I'll go ahead and speed up. Innovations in catering is our next topic and our last topic until we get to the Q&A. So we want to touch a little bit lastly on how tech is transforming catering, which we've touched on a little bit, but we want to dive a little deeper into it. It affects operations, it affects the back of house, it affects how you enhance the guest experience. And kind of we're seeing tech take this major role as brands shift from manual processes to integrated systems. We're just seeing tech take on a lot more influence in regard to the efficiency of catering and the profits of catering as well. So Katherine, this question can be for you. As catering kind of continuously evolves, what role do you see technology playing in making your operations at Red Robin more efficient?
Red Lobster, but
Sorry, Red Lobster. Sorry,
no, you're fine.
Sorry.
It's Red, I would say for Red Lobster, building out a stronger first party ordering experience and moving away from like any semblance of manual ordering entry is top of mind. Of course, like I think I brought this up earlier, like every brand I think should be on the marketplaces. I mean, you get such brand visibility, and those are oftentimes different guests than who would order from you directly, especially for catering, because oftentimes there are certain benefits from ordering through, like EasyCater or something like that for the person ordering. But, it cannot be understated, how important it is to have that strong first party experience. You want guests to be able to come through you to learn all about what you can do for that catering occasion. So making sure that everything can be found, on your website, and it really does help on the guest and ops side to make sure that we can, execute well and deliver on that guest experience. And then one other thing I would add is something that Red Lobster's done in the last year, just for general off-premise, is we use scales to help us improve our order accuracy. And this isn't something that we've done yet, but I would love to see us roll that out for catering as well, to just make sure it's that last little step, check that order, put it on the scale, just have that peace of mind that what you're sending out to the guest is 100% accurate and they're going to have a great experience.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the point about having like a native ordering or native catering solution, I should say, is one that I wish we would have been able to touch on more. But how important that is so that customers, again, you're kind of like building that loyalty. They don't have to go to a third-party provider to order anything from you. They can order it directly from your native ordering site. And also, obviously, we all understand, it really helps your bottom line when you're not having to pay out those additional fees to the third-party platforms. We obviously need the third-party platforms. We want to keep them. It's an additional revenue stream, but being able to bring more people over and be more loyal to your brand by ordering from native catering sites, really, really important, as we all understand. Last question before we get to the Q&A. Jordan, we'll touch on with you. Firebirds went through a major transition from manual ordering to integrated technology. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned, and how has that shift to having more integrated technology improved efficiency at Firebirds?
That's a great question. We saw, just at a high level, a swift decrease in order inaccuracies and issues. I mean, thinking back to when we were manually entering orders, and if anyone on the call still is, I was right there with you, I promise, entering things into an Excel sheet and just, sending it back and forth between your kitchen and your guest, and it was just a lot. But you minimize, by going into integrated tech, you're minimizing your user error with event orders and invoicing. You're minimizing miscommunication with the kitchen and with your front of house staff. You're minimizing oversight with the guests. They may have missed something or didn't see something when sending things back and forth. And then, even delayed or, conversations with third-party drivers, et cetera. So just having that integrated tech has helped us, of course, with the user error, with oversight, et cetera, but also it helps us data track much better, of course, than with manual entry and everything. So we're excited to be on board, fully integrated, so that we can better track and analyze our data, as well as minimize our order inaccuracies. And that has skyrocketed us over the last year, for sure, for certain.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay, well, I want to pivot to the Q&A. I want to thank all three of you, Katherine, Jordan, Brian, just for joining us here today. And we're going to pivot over to the Q&A and answer some of the questions that y'all have put in the live chat. And I'll just kind of, Jordan, Katherine, and Brian, I'll single one of you out. I apologize in advance, and see what kind of like your feedback is in some of the audience questions. So we'll start with this question here. How do you operate a catering business in the beginning stage, when marketing, technology, and operations are not where they need to be? So a brand is kind of starting out at the beginning stage. They know that their marketing and their tech and their operations are not totally there in a place where they would feel super confident. What would you kind of recommend operationally? Like, what should that business start with? What should they focus on? Brian?
I think you have to know your market. Who are going to be your catering customers? Are you in a residential area? Are you in a distribution center? What kind of area do you live in? What kind of area is your business around? I think that's one. Take a look at that. I think you have to develop a strategy as far as who you want your customers to be. Do you want to go after a little Johnny's birthday party, or do you want to go after the corporate catering at an Amazon distribution center with 2,000 people working there? So I think that's a good first place to start. Really do an analysis as far as everything. Who's going to be our delivery company? How are we going to promote our first party? Who's going to take over this catering division? Who are we going to use to promote this? How are we going to do cold calls? So you need to really develop a strategy, and using something like a ChatGPT can also help you with that strategy. But I think you need to do a deep dive into figuring out all the little logistical things and how it's going to work operationally. If we start this catering business, how is that going to work behind the scenes? Who's going to cook? Who's going to prepare? Who's going to package? Do we have packaging? So it needs to be a lot of little logistical things, a lot of little details in your strategy before you can actually move out to have a successful a successful catering company.
That's wonderful. I knew that ChatGPT and AI would worm its way into our conversation. That is a really, really good, I use it all the time. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't. But that is a really, really good point, kind of like understanding logistically, what is it like? Being prepared, like preparedness is next to godliness, or whatever people say, like being super prepared and thinking about logistically how you're going to manage all of this, who's going to be in charge of it, who's the key decision maker for it, and then operationally, like who do you actually want to target so that your dollar goes a little bit further when you do decide to market. Because, when we market to everyone, it's going to give us a lot less of a return. When we market to a specific group or event type or business, it's going to probably yield us a bit more of a return. One more question we can do. Looking back on your catering investments, is there anything you wish you had done differently? That's an interesting one. What are some common mistakes restaurants should avoid when building or expanding their programs? And Katherine, if you want to take the first shot, go for it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think when you're making decisions, obviously when you're making them, you're hoping that that's the best one for the business. I would say what you should avoid is moving too fast. I would say avoid putting a lot of dollars into marketing if you don't have your operations or menu where you want it. I just think that you have to start with the first steps, identifying what it looks like, making sure the ops is ready, make sure that the menu is what you want it to be for the occasions you're going for, make sure that they have all the tools in place to succeed, and then put the money into marketing. I think that it's especially with catering being so top of mind, it's something we all want to be growing. It's really easy to want to just put money into marketing and get the sales in, but you want to make sure that the orders that you get actually lead to long-term growth and that you're not messing up anything that is avoidable if you just focus on the front end with training, staffing, everything we touched on. Really investing in people is the first step.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, guys, I know we're at time. I really want to just conclude this by saying thank you so much to our awesome panelists. And thank you to everyone who's participated in this webinar, whether you put a question in or you were just kind of listening to all the wonderful information. We really touched on why catering is so important, why it's good to start now, even if you're not totally sure what you're doing. It's better to get your feet wet and kind of make changes and make alterations along the way. And something I really think I've taken away from the panel, the importance of that one-to-one interaction for catering, remembering that you might have to change a little bit of your approach when you're marketing, when you're meeting people who you want to cater for. You might have to go a little bit of the extra mile, whether it's, everyone on the panel seems to be meeting people in person. We're doing these biscuit drops. Katherine sending out thank you notes. So making sure that you're keeping that hospitality spirit as you're trying to grow your brand is obviously something that's really, really important when you're venturing into catering or when you're taking your next steps with catering. And again, at Lunchbox, we really just appreciate everyone's participation, especially Katherine, Jordan, Brian. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Good having you.
Awesome, guys. Have a good one.